Horror is all around us in the video game world, and has even been having a bit of a return to popularity recently, with both new releases and fantastic remakes showing up on our consoles with regularity. Even if not all of them end up living up to expectations, there is no end to the number of titles available, and it can be hard to sort through them all and pick out the good ones. It's time then to return to the creeping world of horror and see what spooks have been waiting for us in the shadows in the past few years. Today, we've once again gathered together some of the titles that have put us right off our dinner and caused more than a few sleepless nights. So, grab a comfort blanket, buddy up with a fear friend, and get ready to jump back into a pit of despair, because it's all about to get a little bit spooky. I'm resident paranormal investigator Peter from TripleJump, and here are 10 more horror video games so terrifying we couldn't finish them. Number 10. Simulacra. 2017 horror experience Simulacra allows players to snoop through a stranger's phone to their heart's content. There is a major catch though: the phone in question is full of jump scares and creepy glitches. As players start, they find themselves poking around at a lost phone they've happened across, before discovering that the only thing accessible to them is a cryptic video call for help that was left by previous owner, Anna. After a system reset, more apps become available, and players are able to get in touch with some of Anna's friends and investigate the events leading up to her disappearance. While the voice acting is occasionally, interesting, let's have a listen.
Yeah. This silent treatment
The novelty of the concept makes up for the fact that it is almost certainly the least scary title on this list. Still scary though, there's just something about never knowing whether your app perusal will lead you down a demonic rabbit hole that keeps you on edge the whole time. Arguably the scariest way to experience this title is on your phone as a mobile game, as it will feel much more authentic that way. You'll probably want to make sure it's well secured to something though. One jump scare too many, and it'll be your own phone that's been lost. Number 9. Lone Survivor. Any situation where you're playing as the last human alive is going to have a great deal of tension. Will you make it out with your life? Will you be affected by whatever created this post-apocalyptic world you're inhabiting? How are you going to snack nervously if food is scarce? Lone Survivor is no different, with its title being quite a literal one. The protagonist is the last person remaining after an infection has turned everyone in his city to twitching zombie-like creatures. With food hard to come by and his mental faculties declining after having been trapped in his flat for so long, he finally decides he has to venture out into the world in order to survive, and learns that there may be other survivors after all. As he explores the building he lives in, rooms will change and distort around him, and he'll have to both avoid monsters and decipher whether what he's seeing is real or not. Over the course of several days, it becomes obvious that the man's flat is the only real safe space, or at the very least, the only place he can feel safe. With an aesthetic and atmosphere that take obvious influence from Silent Hill, Lone Survivor is no less spooky for its 2D presentation, and can be harder to stomach than you might expect. Number 8. Rule of Rose. It's likely a lot of folks haven't even heard of Rule of Rose, let alone played it. The rumours surrounding its controversial story led to widespread criticism and calls for a ban throughout Europe, with no release whatsoever in the UK, Australia, or New Zealand. Because of this fuss, physical copies were extremely limited overall, and it's never been offered digitally, meaning it nowadays takes hundreds, if not thousands of dollars to acquire. Exaggerated rumours notwithstanding, it's a shame that much of the gaming public will never get to experience this tragic and troubling PS2 classic. The tale follows Jennifer, a teen who's been sent to an orphanage after her parents pass away in an airship accident. Once there, she finds herself in a toned-down Lord of the Flies-like world, with the younger girls enforcing their self-established class structure with a society that they call the Red Crayon Aristocrats, or aristocrats if you want to get American about this. The story is a complicated one, tying together threads of loss, jealousy, and children's perception of the world. Even though the gameplay was was standard survival horror fare for the time, Rule of Rose's story can stick with you in uncomfortable ways. Take Good Boy Brown, for example. He accompanies Jennifer for the whole game, but his backstory is tragic. Let's just say this is not a game for the dog lovers out there. Number 7. Doki Doki Literature Club. Some of the scariest things are those that look normal on the surface but hide something sinister just beneath their cutesy facades. And there couldn't be a more apt description of Doki Doki Literature Club than that. This horror game masquerading as a dating sim lulls players into a false sense of security with its cute, borderline pastel aesthetic and seemingly standard romantic dialogue. The player character doesn't interact with his classmates much, other than his childhood friend, Sayori. Upon her suggestion, he joins the titular literature club and develops relationships with the other members, which can then grow stronger depending on conversation options and the poetry the player creates for the club. However, things swiftly take a turn for the worse, and only get more ominous from there. After being kicked to the main menu, players will find that the world of DDLC has been changed. The further players get into the now twisted version of the game, the stranger things start to become. Text becomes distorted and unreadable. The characters begin to act in bizarre, concerning ways. And even worse is that it seems as though the girls may have sentience, and that the corruption extends beyond the game itself. Remember though, that the answer to your problems is just Monica. If you know, you know. Yeah, that's right. Mumbo number 5. No, never mind. Number 6. Little Nightmares 2. The prequel to the exceptionally stylized and equally disturbing Little Nightmares, Little Nightmares 2 expands upon the world and lore while also introducing a whole new collection of troubling foes. This time around, players take control of Mono, a small boy who is having recurring dreams about a long corridor with an eyeball-emblazoned door at the end. As he wanders through the wilderness at the start of the game, he happens upon a shack where he meets a mysterious young girl who turns out, spoilers, to be Six, the protagonist from the first game. The two have to rely on each other through the rest of the adventure in order to solve puzzles and occasionally rescue each other from captors as they progress through the Pale City. The atmosphere of the whole game is tense, leading to a great sense of unease. However, this is exacerbated by the enemies that players will have to encounter and attempt to avoid as they journey through the world. Whether they're one of the huge foes that are distorted in horrific ways, or one of the smaller but no less threatening variety of opponent, these horrors are sure to strike fear in even the most resilient of players. And my nightmares certainly won't be little after this one. Number 5. Spirit Hunter NG. It's hard to believe that one visual novel could be scary enough for a list like this, let alone 2. However, Spirit Hunter NG more than makes up for its limited interactivity with its truly horrifying presentation. The second title in the Spirit Hunter series, after paranormal investigation game Deathmark, Spirit Hunter NG follows Akira Kojima, a young man who lives on his own after losing his parents, despite technically being in the custody of his aunt. He lives a dual life, split between fighting in underground boxing matches and caring for his cousin, Army. While looking after her one day, Akira receives a mysterious black postcard with a cryptic riddle. Soon, Army disappears from his house, and he stumbles across the strange figure of Kakuya, who has cursed him and forced him into a lethal game of spirit hunting in order to save his family and friends. There are multiple ways to exorcise each spirit after it's been found, but only one sequence of events will both get rid of the spirit and keep everyone alive. Between this pressure and the haunting artwork, it's hard to make it to the end of the game without getting at least a little spooked. I reckon the NG in Spirit Hunter NG must stand for no-go, because I will not be touching this one. Thank you very much. Number 4. Project 02 Crimson Butterfly. Known as Fatal Frame outside of Europe and simply Zero in Japan, the Project Zero series is great at creating a creeping, uncomfortable atmosphere. Every game requires players to get up close and personal with the spooks, relying on their quick shutter skills to take pictures and cause damage, eventually exorcising these spirits in each game's location. One of the best titles in the series is Project Zero 2 Crimson Butterfly. This installment, originally released on the PS2, follows twins Mio and Mayu as they return to the Minakami region, a favourite of their childhood. As they make their way through the area, Mayu gets distracted and follows a red butterfly, causing the girls to stumble across a seemingly abandoned village, which is in fact the Lost Village from a local urban legend. Supposedly, the town vanished after the failure of a so-called Crimson Sacrifice ritual, and now the ghostly inhabitants are stuck there, along with anyone who gets lost in the nearby forest. Soon the girls learn that this ritual requires twins, and the unfortunate Mayu begins to fall under the spell of the town, forcing Mio to master the camera obscura and rescue them both. With the series' unique brand of in-your-face horror, it won't be long before you're wishing that the Lost Village had just, stayed that way. Number 3. Dead Space 2. The Dead Space series in general is not the most pleasant of experiences, with its tendency to harbour and create the worst monsters imaginable. For our money though, the scariest one of the games has to be Dead Space 2, based on one factor alone, that horrible eyeball bit. That's not to say the rest of the game up to that point is a walk in the park, though. As soon as players jump back into the huge stomping boots of Isaac Clarke, they're met with the horrible hallucinations that have been plaguing him since his encounter with the Marker on the Ishimura 3 years prior. He gets released from the institution he's been placed in and housed on a space station known as the Sprawl, but it isn't long before things go south, and he once again has to run for his life. What follows is another stressful adventure through waves of necromorphs with new and improved varieties, can you hear my air quotes, such as the exploding baby-like creatures to, spice things up in the worst possible way. Isaac teams up with several different people on his new quest to destroy the Marker, but it's mainly up to him once again to face the threat head-on. Thankfully though, that ends very well with no issues or missteps whatsoever. Oh wait, what is that? Oh no! Number 2. Resident Evil 7 Biohazard. The Resident Evil series has had its ups and downs over the years, and while every entry has its own set of spooks, something really needed to be done in order to re-establish its hold on the title of Father of Survival Horror by the time 2017 rolled around. Thankfully, Resident Evil 7 Biohazard rocked up and blew the disappointing previous few titles out of the water. The first of a new era of games in the series, Resident Evil 7 introduces players to concerned husband and part-time handhaver Ethan Winters. After receiving a disturbing message from his wife Mia, who's been missing for 3 years, he makes his way to Louisiana in order to track her down. It quickly becomes obvious that something is up with the Baker family, though. The house is in a horrible state, there are dead things absolutely everywhere, and Mia has been trapped in the basement. And worse still, she doesn't seem to be quite herself anymore. These issues are just the start of Ethan's troubles, though, as things escalate significantly once the Bakers finally decide to show themselves, along with the horrible mold monsters they've been keeping in the basement. There's even DLC to explore, but honestly, this is one residence that's free to keep its evil to itself. I made my mind up as soon as I saw the grandma, to be honest. And number 1, Visage. There's been no shortage of PT clones in the years after its release and eventual removal from the PlayStation storefront. Many of these are almost carbon copies, but still lack that certain something, specifically 2 somethings named Kojima and Del Toro, that made PT so memorable and terrifying. One of the most successful of these aforementioned clones, though, is Visage, a haunted house tour turned psychological torment. This 2020 title takes inspiration from PT and expands upon it, adding a less linear gameplay loop and a sanity mechanic. The game follows Dwayne Anderson as he wanders through a house after a series of horrific events have taken place there. As he explores, he comes across the story of 3 different people who once lived in the home, each with their own trauma to unpack. There's Lucy, a young girl forced to do horrific things thanks to a demon, Dolores and George, a couple whose relationship and mental state goes downhill after the birth of their child, and Rakan, who feared being observed so much that he lashed out at people around him. Once Dwayne makes it through these tough memories, it's finally time to investigate his own past. The mixture of hyper-realistic graphics, gruesome story, and expertly executed atmosphere makes Visage a title that will truly test any horror aficionado's mettle. Sweet dreams, everyone.